Welcome to another episode of Software Explorations Concept Overviews with your favorite tech coach, Ralph. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about defects and defect reports from a software development point of view. As you can see, we are not in our regular studio. We are not in the office, but we do not miss. We keep pushing. We keep delivering that fire content just for you. So let's get into it. All right. So like I said, we're going to be talking about defect reports and defects in general and everything about that. So let's go. What is the definition of a defect? A defect is a shortcoming, an imperfection, or a lack. All right? So what's our agenda for today? We're going to talk about what is a defect, the type of defects, what are defect reports, the components of a defect report, the tools to report defects effectively, and what to do when defects are, quote unquote, fixed. What is a defect anyways? Any deviation or non-conformance from the established standards, requirements, or specifications of a product or service. A defect can occur at any stage of the production or development process, from design and manufacturing to testing and distribution. And a defect isn't only related to software development. It can be in the manufacturing of particular items. You ever buy a product and you have a little sticker in there that says inspected by number 123, whatever that inspector number is. So that's like the QA process is in every industry, but a big focus on it now is in the software development because everything now is based on software. But as it says, it can occur at any stage of production or development, from design and manufacturing to testing and distribution. Software development now is just the, I guess, digital version of what the manufacturing process was and still is to a certain extent. So these deviations can impact the functionality, the performance, the safety, or the overall quality of the product or the service that's being provided. So what are the type of defects? We have functional defects, we have performance defects, we have cosmetic defects, we have safety defects, we have documentation defects, compatibility defects, and usability defects. And we're going to explore each one of them just a little bit, all right? So let's break it down. Let's break down the different type of defects. Okay, so let's start with functional defects. These defects affect the intended functionality of the product or the service. So an easy example, if you have an e-commerce site and you add a product to the cart, and now when you click on the cart icon, it's supposed to have the number of items in the cart. B, when you click on it, it's supposed to take you to the cart. Right? So let's say it shows the number of items that you have in the cart, but when you click on it, it doesn't take you there. It either does nothing, or it takes you to an error page, or let's say it takes you back to the home page. All of those different results are functional defects because the product is not working as intended. So that is a functional defect. Now, we also have performance defects. Performance defects involve issues related to the product's speed, efficiency, or resource usage. So what the heck does that mean? So what that means is, if, let's say you're going to a website, let's say ESPN.com, and the expectation is that the website is supposed to load in under 1 second, when there are 10 million users accessing the site at the same time. Okay? However, one of the servers that serves up ESPN.com, it happens to go down. Now, that 1 second time that it's supposed to load, let's say it's taking 5 seconds for users, and that degrades the it degrades the product speed, right? And now users are upset. They're going to CBS Sports instead, or they're going to Fox Sports instead because they're having a bad user experience. So although the actual functionality of the website is working as intended, the speed of the website, the efficiency, or the resources that the site needs has a problem, and that causes a performance defect. To continue along, we also have cosmetic defects. These defects are related to the appearance of the product or the service. So an example is you go to, let's stick with ESPN, right? You go to ESPN.com and the logo is broken. It loads in under a second, and when you click on the links, all of that works, but the logo is not displaying. That is a cosmetic defect because the appearance of the website is not as intended, and that still gives a bad user experience because when the site that I go on, I want to see the logo, or now I'm wondering, hey, is this a phishing site? Is something happening? What's going on? We also have safety defects. So a safety defect can potentially harm users or the environment. And we can look at two different types of safety defects, right? So to stick with ESPN.com on the first part for the harm of the users, let's say someone is able to maliciously get into the ESPN servers and they install some type of malware that when you go to the ESPN homepage, it downloads a malware into your computer, and now you have a virus, or even worse, it puts some type of bad code for people to be able to access your computer or log your keys and send all your personal data to whoever is doing that hack, right? So that would be a safety defect from one aspect. Another aspect is from a review that we did on the Bug Bite. One of our first Bug Bites, right, with the Nissan recall, where they were having issues with accelerating and braking. So that it not only does that involve the user, it also impacts the environment. Or let's say that there was a certain amount of emissions that a vehicle is supposed to have, but because of some configuration or whatever the case may be, that emission is just polluting the air even worse than it already is. So, or for instance, one of those EV vehicles, the way that the battery is set up, it's not done properly, and the vehicle catches fire. Not only does that impact the user, but it also impacts the environment. So I hope you can see, like, there's so many different type of safety defects that can cause the user and impact the environment. And while we do care about the environment, our number one concern is the impact or the harm that it causes the user. Okay? The next type of defect is documentation defects. These defects are related to errors or inaccuracies in documentation, instructions, manuals, or other supporting materials for the product or service. And this could be as small as a typo in the user manual or the documentation, but this can also be just as bad as like totally giving the wrong information to the users, causing them to use the product or the service in the wrong way, which can also lead to a safety defect, which would cause harm. So the documentation defects can be a wide range of issues. Next, compatibility defects. Compatibility defects arise when a product or service does not work as expected with other related products, systems, or platforms. So this can include, let's say, and you can see this in integrations like with APIs and everything like that, but just how two products work together. And with compatibility defects, there's always one that's going to be more powerful than the other, right? So let's say you have a product that should integrate into another product like VS Code, and so you can see it when you build plugins and things like that, where you have a plugin that would work into a bigger software, but now a little change is made to the software, and now the plugin doesn't work anymore, and now you have to go back and update the plugin. Now the users of the plugin are upset, But what do you expect? So that could be a compatibility defect for the plugin, for the plugins company, caused by the main software company. And with the main software company, they don't really have to care. Like, it's like you have to upgrade your plugin to match them because they're the big fish and the plugin company is the little fish, all right? And then we get to usability defects. Usability defects affect the user experience, making the product difficult to understand, navigate, or use effectively. So, and that could be related to the cosmetic defect when we give the example of the logo not displaying, like the image of the logo not displaying. So it just shows a broken image. But it can also be related to putting different things in hard to find places. So usually on an e-commerce site, the shopping cart icon is at the top, either usually I've seen it on the top right. But let's say they put it all the way at the bottom of the page and it's hard to find it, it's hard to navigate. Or let's say the navigation menu, right? The links are only like when you go directly above the text, but around it, it doesn't have, like, it's not clickable. So that can be another usability defect because it's like it's not efficient, it's not effective, it's hard to understand. So that is an example of a usability defect. Now we're getting to the good stuff. What is a defect report? It's also known as a bug report or an issue report. A defect report is a formal document used in software development, manufacturing, and other industries to report and document the details of a defect or non-conformance that has been identified in a product or process. To make it simple, it just means it's a report of what's not working, how you expected it to work, and how it's actually working, and that's your defect report. What is the purpose of a defect report now? Which we kind of touched on with like what it is very similar to the purpose. The primary purpose of a defect report is to communicate the issue to the relevant stakeholders, such as the developers, the testers, the quality assurance personnel, and the managers, so that corrective action can be taken to address the problem. In layman's term, the purpose is to let whoever is involved, whether they're on the side of fixing it or the side of knowing what's wrong, that something is wrong and we need to fix it. Very simple, right? The name kind of explains itself. However, now we get to the juicy stuff. What is in a defect report? The first thing would be a defect identification, right? A defect ID, right? And we're going to get into each one of them specifically, but let's just go high level, right? Defect identification, description of the defect, the expected results of the defect, the actual results of what's happening, the steps to reproduce, very, very important. The severity or the priority of the defect, very important as well. What environment that it's happening in, attachments, the reporter's information, and the status and the resolution of the defect. Okay? So what's the defect ID? It's a unique identifier for the defect, often assigned by a tracking system to easily reference and track the issue. Okay, so it's just some way to identify the defect, a way to put it up in whatever system it's being logged in. Regular ID. The description. It's a clear and concise description of the defect, including what aspect of the product or process is affected and how the defect manifests. Right, and we're gonna get we're gonna have supporting points for the description. Expected versus actual results. It's a clear and concise explanation of what was expected to happen in contrast to what is actually happening in the process. So I expected to get A, but D is actually happening, and that's what the problem is, right? Just straight to the point. What is the problem? The steps to reproduce. Detailed steps that allow others, the person who's most likely going to fix it or reviewing it, to replicate the defect. This helps developers and testers understand the issue and verify that it has been resolved. So you identify a problem. While you're creating the defect report, you create, like, you list the steps to reproduce it. You go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, how to reproduce the defect, right? So now when the developers get it, they're going to follow those steps to try to recreate the problem. Now, after the developers have fixed it, they're going to send it back to the testers, and just because the person reported it Doesn't mean they're going to be the same one who tests it to make sure that it's been resolved. All right. So the testers understand. So it just helps everyone understand how to recreate it and how to validate that it's fixed. Severity and priority. The severity level indicates the impact of the defect on the product's functionality, the performance, or the safety. The priority level indicates how urgently the defect needs to be addressed. Okay, so severity says, all right, how bad is this impact? The priority says, how fast do we need to fix it? So you can have something that is pretty severe, but it's a low priority because it's happening in a place that it's not that serious, but when it does happen, it's severe. So you can classify that priority as maybe medium, but the severity might be high, but it's high in a very low traffic area. Okay. Environments. Information about the environment in which a defect was observed, including software versions, hardware configurations, and any other relevant contextual details. And that pretty much explains itself, but the version of the software, what kind of physical requirements are needed to have it. Like, so let's say you might be on, it's happening on a MacBook M1 with whatever version of iOS, not iOS, whatever version of OS X, but it doesn't happen on Windows. Very important information to share, right? Or it might happen on Windows 10, but not Windows 11. Or during your testing, it's happening in the development environment, but it's not happening in the staging environment or the production environment. All those details are very important to share. Attachments. Very simple. Screenshots, log files, or any other supporting material that helps illustrate and provide additional context for the defect. Something that's very helpful for developers is while you're testing and you encounter a problem, to send that log file so they can see the server logs of what happened at that moment in time. So although they're also going to be recreating it, but they also have additional information. Screenshots, very helpful, especially like when you're doing web testing and UI testing. So you can show what is the problem that's happening, because like we said, based on the configuration, you might not always be able to reproduce it exactly, but that screenshot is going to be worth more than gold. Reporter info is the contact details of the person who reported the defect in case additional information is needed or follow-ups is required. So who reported it and what do you need to do to, like, who needs to be contacted for follow-up additional information? Status and resolution. As the defect progresses through the resolution process, its status may change from open to in progress and finally to closed or resolved. The reporter should also document how the defect was resolved, including any code changes or corrective action. Tools for reporting bugs. So there's enterprise service as a software system such as Jira. There's test case management systems such as Inflectra, Spyra Team. There's Kiwi test case management system, which we recently installed via Docker. There's bug specific tools such as Bugzilla. There's Word documents if you're into that. And if we're going back to the 80s, there's paper and pencil. So the bug's fixed. Now what? Well, we have to review and verify the fix, retesting, and then regression testing. We'll get into that in a little bit. Then document the resolution and the results. Now we're ready to release the fix. Let's go. Notify the stakeholders that the bug has been resolved, the defect is fixed, and we get to close the bug. We squash it. Bug's done. But wait, there's more. It is essential to add automation around the resolution of a bug. A bug is an obvious sign of a lack of test coverage at all levels of the quality process, whether it's from unit testing to end-to-end testing. At the discovery of any bug, it is highly recommended to add some form of automation testing that will catch the bug if it ever creeps back in. We do not like bugs. Conclusion. What did we discuss today? We discussed what a defect is. We identified the types of defects, a long list. We discussed what makes up a defect report, all the components of it. We reviewed the tools for reporting defects effectively and efficiently, unless you're using Word or pen and paper. which we are not doing that. And we discussed how to resolve defects. I hope you found this video informative on defects and how to report them. If you didn't know what a defect is, hopefully you're informed. If you're not in the software if you're not in the software development industry, but you find this information fascinating, I am so happy to have you here, as it is so useful to, although you're not in the industry, to know how everything works. And when you're using a software, you can say, okay, this is how this was tested. You don't need to be in the industry to appreciate it. I know a lot of people, they just want the end product, but when you can actually understand it, it means so much more to you. If you found this video helpful, informative, then please don't hesitate to hit the like button, share the video with somebody who would find it useful, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so I can know that you are finding these videos valuable, and I can continue to put out amazing fire content just for people like you. All right. But until next time, this has been another episode of Software Explorations Concept Overviews, and we will get back to it again next week, because we do not miss. We are always and forever engineered to win. On that note, Tech Coach Ralph signing off.
If you enjoyed the fascinating information shared in this video and you want more, be sure to hit the subscribe button to Tech Coach Ralph to be notified for new videos.